especially when we as a student, we try to evolve ourselves, and later on we try to learn about what is intelligence quotient, what is emotional quotient, and what is social quotient. Times we all link it with spiritual and social petra. Social quotient is many times also confused socialites, and there has been time when lots of entrance examinations and services, as well as private as well as the government one, they have been using these quotients to measure your intellect, your capability, and also come out with variety of solutions, and I say try to get the best human resource of these resources. But this fundamental of intelligence, emotional social, we want to discuss it, and the fundamental reason behind coming up with this is that as a student, as a learner, the elements are equally important and they are interlinked. Earlier, intelligence quotient was very important, used to focus on, but when they realized that no, it is not the intelligence that matters more, it is also the emotional being, then the emotional quotient came in. And later on, when emotional, only purely emotional or purely intelligence didn't work much, then they combined it, and after combining, they also started thinking about what about social present empathy and sympathy and social orientation of a person, society, etc. All these factors come here, and now human resource people want to try and get most important and most talent inside there. Many times, a big company, has a variety of people, in their organization. So they try to look not purely at your what you have learned in your background. Somebody is in finance, somebody marketing, somebody's language, somebody's cross cultural, etc. But you will find within an organization, if it is a marketing company, not necessarily everybody is from marketing back. If it is a finance company, not necessarily everybody is from finance. They believe that one if you have attitude, you have that fire. These skills can be trained. After training, it can be improved upon, and even a raw person with no knowledge can be integrated into this. So and that integration can happen only when your emotional quotient is good, your social quotient is good, apart from your intelligence. And from a learning point of view, these are very important, because now you are studying and in a final somebody is in final, or somebody is already passed out, but lots of people are looking for jobs. So in that point of view, you are aware of your surroundings, you are aware of your own being. All these matter. So before I initiate the talk for today and request our mentor, Colonel Mukteswar Prasad sir, introduce himself, as well as use Wang, our intern. I would like to formally welcome you for today's on this, and the topic intelligence quotient, emotional quotient, and social. We will learn the basics, and with some examples, we'll try to help our speaker Subhang to come out with some concrete solutions and make our talk more interactive and interesting. So I would like to welcome our mentor, Colonel Mukteswar Prasad sir. He is passed out from my school, Sainik School Tilaya, passed out in 1969 when I was not born. And he joined National Defense Academy. Later on, he also joined IMA, from where he got commissioned. And he is from the engineering corps. And he has MTech from IIT. His core is electronics and mechanical. He has been part of variety of research and development programs in electronics and mechanical. Headed variety of projects, and he has been product manager, he has general manager, many managers apart from being a Fauji. Plus, the most interesting aspect of his is that he was vice president for a very big export house used to export products USA. And the most important part is, after he became vet, he has been training people for service selection board. That is mandatory for anyone join National Defense Academy or Combined Defense and IMA and other or RB. Plus, in last few years, he has helped more than 150 people to got selected for service selection board. And service selection board itself is a combination where intelligence quotient, emotional quotient, and social quotient, everything is just. I have also faced service selection board twice after 10 plus. it was unfortunate that these three combinations that I'm talking to you was not perhaps fine-tuned, and I was not selected. Rather, I was not recommended. Therefore, they suggested me that you are more suitable for the civilian life. That's what I am doing. Based on their assessment, I'm doing quite well with our society. So, what is this emotional quotient? What is this social quotient? What all these quotients that we are talking about? Believe my word, three quotients are life changers, important and mandatory for each and every. Whether you are as seeking a job, whether you are into job, whether you plan to become entrepreneur, you plan to become leader, you plan to export, import, everywhere you will find factors. And that is the reason why it becomes very important for us to understand, especially as intern, focus on these areas, because they will certainly going to change your as much. Try to come out with your questions you have, try to come out with questions you have. If you want to talk about us, to talk about it more detail in later phases, we will be able to do it for you, because our well-wisher and friend Colonel Mukteswar sir has agreed to mentor many people for a variety of other activities, well, including personality development and whatnot. We'll try to come out with some courses also for you. So, my friend, please welcome. So, and many times I was told, I was just going through that. This intelligence certainly is hereditary and affected by environment, and you can increase it. Even the emotional quotient, is not that difficult to be controlled, but it requires certain, discipline in you. It requires kind of developing some attitude for change. If you don't have that attitude, that you cannot suppress your feelings in front of the boss. Many times you will find your colleagues, friends who are very smart. In front of the boss, they are the most innocent people, and with their own colleagues and employees, they are the most crooked one, and they are cunning and everything. So these are all emotional response, and social response. They are all internal.
Worst thing as in the today's world, which is social problem, is a suicide. It's an emotional problem, because we have not trained our people to tackle the failures. Bulk of the people who fail, why are they both coming to suicide? Where's the need? Why can't they control, uplift myself? So there is what you said, right? There's a need to be aware and manage that. So we should really be developing ourselves. That development is essential. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, Samangi.
No. Yeah. So these are all basic things that comes into these pictures. I guess our friends who are watching us, they are following us, and my friends, if you have any questions, any thoughts, anything that is coming to you, please do write it here. We'll put up a question, to our panel, and slowly move ahead. And now over to Subhangi. Subhangi, please carry on. How do we have only been focusing on judging someone through IQ most of the time, and we have ignored this EQ and S. For example, I tell you, there are lots of people in offices, and you might be knowing that there are some bosses or even colleagues who are whom we call moodial people. They tend to swing their mood. Many times they are very happy, they talk to you very well, and next day when you try and interact, that fellow talks in a totally strange way and behaves very irrational, right? So in that kind of a situation, the person who is interacting with that fellow, he is also of the same emotional level. There is a chance of full conflict. In fact, I'm a little lucky that somehow in our military school our system was such that we have we have our life based on morality and discipline. But not everybody is lucky that way, and many times I find myself out of place in various places because I talk morality and I follow ethics and values. So, and that gives a loss of shock, and then I have to apply this cultural management and interpersonal relationship and bear that shock and control the situation.
Today COVID situation has come. A company who is not working, how many of them are, except for a few good companies like Tata's are out there, who are prepared to pay for the employees?
Right, sir. Because Tata's follow lots of more. Yes, Tata's have their values.
They have got values. How many people have got their values? Everyone is banya.
Right, and perhaps this kind of attitude of ad hocism, has pushed Indian society backward.
Absolutely.
And in spite of all resources possible in our system, we have not been able to perform well at any front, neither in education, nor in society, nor in economics, neither at political level.
Everywhere.
So that means
you look at Rajasthan today, where the ethics? You're talking about morality, emotion. We are talking such a high word, emotional intelligence, and what you that everything. But what is happening in Rajasthan? What is happening there?
Right.
Where do we call it? We are looking at it. Sorry, if that's being. I will not like to go to be a political rather, but that's the status.
Yes, but that is the reality that we face on a daily basis. So, my friends, I mean, see, well, when we are talking about emotional intelligence, social intelligence, etc., we also have to, face the reality, and the reality is that in addition to IQ, EQ, and SQ, we have other challenges, and they are, ethics and value, morality, which is degrading in society, and we have to fight back. And not everybody can do it. Many times we end up, becoming part of that. So you as a student or a young, generation, my suggestion will kindly look into these aspects also. We will try to have one session on, ethics, morality also.
Absolutely.
Because this is very important, I believe, for the new generation. So Subhangi, so let's move forward. But before you go ahead, let me come back to our channel and see if we have friends who are. Abu is saying most of the time we only think about IQ, and does the IQ guarantee someone to be successful in his work?
No,
not at all, my friend. Mr. Jamsari, no more now. Very. It's not only IQ. IQ can certainly push you.
IQ will give you a break. IQ will give you a break. EQ will give you upward swing.
Upper swing, right? So success is possible only when you have good. Only IQ will do a first break, perhaps, but not high up. So
notwithstanding sorry, Ravi. Notwithstanding same, but it is necessary. You must have IQ also. Without IQ, you cannot go up. So you have to have minimum threshold level. IQ is necessary. You cannot go on EQ itself. So IQ and EQ, both of them had to work in tandem.
Right. So it's not only one aspect. It has to be a combination of both and balance. Urja is saying, I think there is a less awareness about, but in the same time of pandemic, many businesses have stepped up and reached out to need. This has happened only because of the importance. Right, Urja.
On the contrary, I'll just say this COVID has killed us from EQ point of view, because we become more personal, we think that on the social field, that's like around we think we are there. Absolutely no. No one looks after anyone else. They become totally personal in the environment.
Right in this direction, I will add one point, sir. I recall when lots of workers were migrated from different parts of country,
I know.
And they were walking on the road, and rest everybody was watching them. And at times when they were there were pregnant ladies, there were small kids, there were elderly people, and they were robbed off by some people on the way. So can you imagine the kind of society we have lived in? And
short memory.
Something, and then no action taken and discontinued, and such kind of pathetic situation, can happen only when there is degradation of morality value. So my friend, I believe being part of this emotional quotient and social quotient and morality and values are very important. Learn, surround family through, etc. But if you are lucky, you are in a good environment, you certainly will become good. In law, I have studied a bit of criminal law, and the social factor where you live in matters a lot. And you are living among similar kind of crooks. The way we have discussed about the Colombian literature, drug war, mafia, how the violence takes place, Colombia, in the literature and in the reality as well. The environment is such that it's very easy to do crime, and they feel very pride about. And many times they make music and dance, after having done some good crime. So just imagine, these are all society that shape. So my friend, I will suggest you please be careful of your surroundings, and that is part of emotion and social. So Subhangi, please do share. I understand, these are very new concept for all our. They have never learned about it. They have never given a thought on this. But my idea of accepting this proposal from Subhangi came from her side, was allow ourselves to become more aware of our surrounding, to be aware of our own self, to be aware of where we stand in from outside world, or also from inside world. I have given you one hint long back in the beginning, if you recall, by giving you example of a philosopher from Algeria, and I have talked to you about that term called habitus, the sanskar that is there in your face, that is called doxa, right? So that sanskar, comes only through IQ, and there is a power relation, playing at every level. When we interact in the family with our father, mother, sister, there is a power relation. When we go out, there is a power. When we are in the classroom, there is a power. When we go to office, there is a power relation. When we go to political level, there is a power. When we go to economic level, there is a power. So all these relations have been summed up at 4 points. One is called social relation. One is called economic relation. Economic power, cultural power, intellectual power. Four, and all four are being shaped through IQ. And so this is my take, which I have to share. And in addition to that, there is another point that I want to also share. That nowadays HR as well as some good experts, they deploy many parameters to judge you, including now artificial intelligence are coming. Based on your behavior, based on your writing style, based on your what you speak, based on your when you sleep, when you wake up, this IQ thing, artificial intelligence thing, starts, predicting about. And even earlier, there was a revolution called, loss of focus was given on data management. They were collecting data about, fact about you. But there came a time when said, no, it's data is not only required. They started adding lots of, quality thing like your behavior. So there came a revolution, called behavior revolution, and they started talking about behavior, and there came, no, it's not behavior, let's focus on many more things. So this comes post behavioral revolution. David Easton and all from America took initiatives in. So if you combine, these studies of SQ as well as Bodium theory of power relation as well as David behavioral revolution. So there are experts, I'm telling you, who have successfully created parameters and metrics that follow that metric. You will be able to even foretell what a political leader is going to say tomorrow, or what a CEO can behave next day when he or she faces problems. So these are all little higher level things, which generally common people do not understand. But already, top brass people are using it successfully, and including, policy making influence, including, share market valuations, including social media, monitoring, social media analysis, I will say. These are all interlinked to